Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and everything in between, we are once again looking at obscure DOS games. And this week, oh boy, this week I've prepared a pretty fun selection, I think. So grab a seat or some comfortable yoga pose of some kind, grab a drink and something to snack on, and let's get on with it. If the name Panda Entertainment rings a bell, it's because they were behind Sango Fighter, a popular PC series of versus fighting games. I believe we've covered at least one of them in one of the earlier DOS gaming history videos. Anyway, Tough Guy is another one of their titles, considerably less known though. It's a traditional versus fighting game in which 8 modern-day martial artists from around the world participate in a tournament. And apart from set 8, which all differ considerably in design and the way they play, there are also 4 bosses characters that can only be played against in single player, and cannot be picked in versus mode. One of them, named Walker, is a cybernetic Nazi. Now, that's not something you see often, right? And yes, certain words do not work well with YouTube's algorithm, so are best spelled out. All characters have unique special moves and the game overall is a decent contender against Street Fighter 2. The most notable mechanic in Tough Guy is so-called charge up, which, if opponents give you a second of a breather, allows you to gather up energy that raises both your super meter and health. In 2019, Tough Guy was ported to freeware engine Mugen, and it's available on it free of charge. I'm not sure if the original devs know about it or not, but that's what happened. The main difference between the two versions being the ability to pick 3 of the boss characters in versus mode, with 4th being a secret unlock. One could say that Tough Guy rode the wave of popularity of Street Fighter 2, or even more so SNK games, and perhaps it did, but it doesn't mean that it was a game that couldn't stand on its own. It's a decent fighter and one that's fun even today. Triplane Turmoil is one of the simplest looking, most basic in its gameplay design and overall playing games in this video. It's also one of the best games that 1996 spawned. A game that looks like nothing special, but hides a dark secret. And that secret is that it's probably one of the best multiplayer experiences not only of 1996, but also on DOS overall. In theory, in Triplane Turmoil, you're to fly a World War I style triplane in a hypothetical scenarios for either England, Germany, Japan or Finland, in 5 mission campaigns for each country. But believe me, if you have anyone else with you that's willing to play old games, you can skip the single player mode entirely. It's okay, but not groundbreaking and definitely not what the game is best at. Where Triplane Turmoil spread its, and it's a bad pun warning, wings, is couch multiplayer, where even up to 4 players can compete against each other in a series of simultaneous 4-player dogfights in high resolution on a screen split in 3 to fit all the planes and the overwhelming hectic action. It's pure fun, arcade but skill-based romp where the best always wins. It favors skill over blind shooting and flying. For instance, in some combat scenarios, when flying towards the enemy plane, it may be worth to cut the engines to fool the opponent to fly over you, just to kick them back on again a moment later and attack the enemy from behind. And it's just one of many fun tactics that this game allows for. On the surface, it's incredibly basic, but the execution of the multiplayer in Triplane Turmoil is just perfect, especially if you manage to play it against 3 others. If you don't, it's fun against a single friend too, just not as blood pressure raising. Powerdrome is a sci-fi futuristic racer. It features 6 different half-pipe tracks full of various hazards like chicanes, tunnels and crusher gates to name a few. Each of the planets you race on has a different atmosphere and weather conditions, which you need to account for preparing for the race by using appropriate engine filters. Shifting conditions during gameplay may even require you to hit the pit stop and make changes mid-race. Powerdrome is one of those games that demands patience and a lot of training. A lot. Which understandably may be too much to ask for some, especially in 2023. But it's ultimately worth it if you persist till you get good. Get good. And what I'm trying to say here is that the mouse controls are beyond difficult when you first start playing. And it's not unusual to just bounce left and right seemingly without any way to center your speeder before you master them. But as the saying goes, practice makes perfect, and it's true in case of Powerdrome too. If you keep playing, getting that atomic in size bit better with each game, eventually you'll be able not only to stay on the track but also overtake opponents not only on either of the sides of their speeder, but also over and under them, draining that afterburner dry. Powerdrome is definitely not a game for everyone, partly why it's so little known I think, but it's also one that has a lot to offer if approached with the right mindset. Darklands is probably one of, if not the most ambitious and best game that's criminally overlooked and underrated by most DOS gamers. Also probably most broken. It was one of the most bug-ridden and terribly programmed games to ever come out, and it's not easy to challenge Bethesda in that. They are, after all, masters of buggy games. Anyway, the first release of Darklands had a coding issue in it that could even potentially corrupt system files on users' hard drive. It was obviously fixed with re-release, but bad taste prevailed it seems, and the game never received recognition it deserved. Darklands takes place in a Roman Holy Empire's territory of medieval Germany, and it's represented in unprecedented detail in over 90 cities, calendar system, currency, and even weapon and armor types being historically correct. The character creator is one of the most interesting ones I've seen to date too. After choosing name, gender and your social status, you pick your initial occupation, which adds corresponding skill points but also 5 years to your age. And you can keep adding more careers for as long as you'd like, each adding more and more skill points and years to your character. So it's a balancing act of finding a suitable middle ground between the strength and experience. Additionally, magic is substituted with alchemy, and you can brew pretty much any and all potions you'd like, given you're actually proficient enough to do so. Enemies and monsters that you'll face are all based on accurate at the time mythos in the region, so dragons, demons and witches may be something that you'll be facing at some point in one form or another. Darklands is non-linear and completely open-ended, which is noticeable from the get-go as your party of 4 starts in an inn in randomly chosen city and not a predefined location. And while your main goal theoretically is to defeat Demon Lord Baphomet and amass a lot of fame, funny enough quantified as a number, even after you do so and watch the ending sequence, you can jump straight back in and carry on adventuring, completing quests and collecting experience. In its current form, patched and fixed, Darklands is an amazing experience that all fans of role-playing games should at least give a chance, as it will no doubt surprise them with its depth and fun factor. City Beneath the Surface is a first-person fantasy role-playing with real-time combat. 4 years after the end of the war between orc invaders and the alliance composed of humans, dwarves and elves, a suspicious portal opened near the kingdom's capital. And with its arrival, at first all the most powerful warriors and mages in the land were slain in their sleep by a mysterious unknown force, then all means of deadly, bloodthirsty monsters and creatures started pouring out of it, polluting the land with their unholy presence. The king, being the crown-wearing big boy that he was, decided to send the party to reconnaissance the portal and what's on the other side, who's the leader of the invading forces and what are they actually after. And you, my dear viewer, lead said party of adventurers. Your group is composed out of 4 characters that can be one of 5 races and 4 classes. And while the game offers few pre-generated parties, it's obviously advisable to create your own. City Beneath the Surface is your typical dungeon crawler, with 30 of these to clean out of any and all enemies and monsters, avoiding traps and solving occasional simple puzzles. Even though the game is pretty decent and quite enjoyable for what it is pretty obvious why it never gained critical acclaim. 1998, when it came out, was not a year for grid-based dungeon crawlers. We're all about free movement, full 3D dungeons, and it didn't look as if it was going to change anytime soon. Oxyd was originally released as shareware, and this may be the deciding factor for its obscurity. But it doesn't speak to the game's quality, which in fact is quite exceptional. It's an action puzzler which feels like a cross between Marble Madness and, let's say, Chip's Challenge. The game is composed out of 200 levels called landscapes, in which you have to find all the titular Oxyd stones and open them. Each of them come in the same pattern or color and must be touched in the correct sequence in order to remain open. Naturally, they're not all there just for the taking, and they're scattered over a large area, earlier mentioned landscape, usually not in easy to access and remote parts of it. Uncover a pair and it stays open, uncover all pairs and the landscape is completed. It's similar to memory-like game in this matter. But there are also numerous environmental features like walls, pitfalls, quicksand, one-way walls, breakable tiles, reflecting lasers, movables, doors, switches and tiles that can only be rolled over once and then they crumble. And that's just some of them. If you add various different objects that can be picked up and used to give you special abilities and hints, it makes for a really interesting and playable game. Oxyd is challenging but features very well thought out progression curve, allowing you to learn all the ropes as you go without overwhelming you with all of that at once. Every 10th level there's a sort of bonus meditation stage, which is a nice palette cleaner from all the puzzling. Oxyd is great, and if you like puzzlers at least a little, you should check it out. In the last Obscure Games video we've spoke about Archon Ultra, a modern remake of classic Archon. A brilliant in its simplicity title really. Today we'll talk about Dark Legions, an action strategy which for all intents and purposes could be summarized as Archon Ultra Ultra. And why is it that you may wonder? Well, it was released by the same publisher, SSI, best known for their numerous strategy and role-playing series, which arguably Archon and Dark Legions are not really representatives of. Well, maybe partially strategy, as they're both sorta board games not unlike chess, and they're both identical gameplay-wise. meaning that the strategy layer takes place on a board where each side is composed of numerous pawns that represent various creatures and units, all of them different not only in looks but also in what their capabilities and stats are. When two opposing units meet on the board, the game moves to a separate arena where they fight in real-time combat. Same as in Archon, the winner is not solely defined by the chosen units, but also by players' skill level. Unlike Archon, however, Dark Legions is more advanced and enhanced for more varied and entertaining gameplay. At the start of the game, each side purchases units for a predefined number of credits, and they can pick and choose from any of the 16 available ones. It's not difficult to guess that in most games players will gravitate towards these that they learn to operate best in real-time combat and try to manage their budget around them. So picking and matching of your faves or good counters against what enemy may pick is a must and half of fun. There's a story to Dark Legions, one of two orbs of power, which one is seemingly lost, and two powerful magic wielders each having one fight against each other for the control of the second orb, as whomever controls both is granted immense power and immortality, apparently, but I've been born with two orbs and they neither hold any real power nor they grant immortality. Although I think I've still a few years left to test that second part out. But story is not something I or you should care about in Dark Legions, because while it's there, you quickly forget about it playing the game and having fun. As in most cases of versus games, it's best played against another person and not CPU. So if you have someone to play it with, then for one I envy you, and for two you'll have a great time. Nomad, aka Project Nomad, is one of the most overlooked and forgotten titles of entire DOS era. It's a space trading, exploration, diplomacy and combat game not unlike Starflight or Elite, but with more interesting and deep plot. Essentially, an alien ship crash landed on Earth, accidentally giving us hyperdrive technology and an information about upcoming evil alien Borg-like race of Korok that's bent on destruction of all life in the universe. Upon learning that, you decide to join the Space Alliance and help them fight the Korok. So you travel around space, composed of approximately 270 planets, meet alien races, trade with them and uncover the mysteries of your ship and evil Koroks. You'll also defend your ship against attackers, fighting in action-based space combats. While Nomad is very story-driven, featuring many scripted conversations and a lot of information gathering, the game is really non-linear and doesn't make you follow one and only path to its conclusion. So you can as well follow the plot straight to the end, or immerse yourself in this world exploring it, upgrading your ship and fulfilling many missions that the Alliance will post for you to complete. Nomad is one of those games that if I knew of back then, I would have seriously fell for it and spent hundreds if not thousands hours playing it till there would be no more content left in it. And if you like games like that, this one's one of the best there is, even if it's largely completely unknown. You're one of the 3 officers manning the space station beacon stupidly named 04523N. And manning is a big word, as in reality you're asleep. All 3 of you are in fact in cryogenic suspension, as the station manages itself entirely on its own, only waking the crew when either there's an emergency or for routine checks. With a long yawn and the alarm signal ringing in your ears, you're violently awakened as some unknown life form seemingly approaches the space station. Wreckers is an isometric sci-fi action game with some very superficial strategy elements. Your main task in it is to defend the station and rid of an alien invaders as soon as possible. Because if at any point in time station will detect foreign life forms on it for any longer than an hour, a self-destruct sequence will be initiated. From my point of view, it's a terrible misjudgment and a bad station design, but not everyone is graduate of Starfleet Academy same as I am, and had to tackle with various difficult design scenarios before being granted the name of multidimensional intergalactic master of space station design and superior ultra-smart well of incredible ideas. And that's me. You can look me up in Starfleet records. Coming back to our station, any bacteria or fungal infection could be considered an alien life form. What about pets like cats and dogs? Would the station blow itself out too if detected any of these? I would have never allowed for such design to leave my office. Never mind, you're controlling one of the 3 officers fighting the titular wreckers, which come in swarms of plasmodian spores invading station's 4 sections. You can suck the spores out space with a gigantic hoover-like space hose. When they settle on the hull, you'll need to get in your spacesuit and spray infected areas with a cleansing agent. And spores found in station's corridors have to be shot down with plasma beams, all the while avoiding being shot yourself. Additionally, at any given moment you're in control of few droids, which are largely capable of acting independently if sent to an area where you want them to act, and they can be assigned to be cleaners, engineers or even fighters. In time, as you progress through the game, you'll gain experience and higher ranks, which in turn will enable you to construct more efficient droids in your factory. So the main goal of Wreckers is to dispose of all the alien spores so that the space station could continue working uninterrupted. Wreckers is not a game I knew about back in the day, and it's definitely one that's worth trying out. 1989 gave us one of those sci-fi movies that were so bad that they ended up being pretty damn good. Robot Jox, a futuristic story of East versus West where there's no regular war anymore and all the conflicts between both blocks are solved with use of giant mechs operated by pilots, the titular Robot Jox. I don't wanna say that One Must Fall 2097 is based on that movie, but it kinda looks like it. With a slight difference, One Must Fall 2097 is actually pretty good and very innovative. What is so special about it then? Well, it's a versus fighter with all encounters taking place in gigantic cage-like arenas. The twist being that you can choose one of 10 pilot characters and control one of huge mechs, mixing and matching them together to form the best combo possible. Both characters and robots can be improved between the fights, role-playing style, and despite that it may seem like unnecessary addition, it actually adds a lot to the fun factor and is the main reason I'm so surprised that One Must Fall was not more popular. I'm pretty sure that not only then, but even today there are no versus fighting games that would allow for really game-changing upgrades as the game carries on. Oh, and it also features finishing moves, unlike those in Mortal Kombat, so there's that too. If you like fighting games and never played One Must Fall, I can pretty much guarantee that it's one of the most original and unusual games that you've ever had your paws on. Toasty! We're 3 episodes into this series already. What do you think? Is it something you actually enjoy? Are the games as rare and unknown as I believe them to be? Or maybe you have a title in mind that I've not covered and you think it should find its way to a video like that? Make sure to let me know. And obviously, come back to watch the next video, in this or any other retro series that I run. If DOS Gaming is your retro jam, smash those like and subscribe buttons as hard as you can. And since over 70% of you watching are not subscribed, you're missing out on a lot of new videos. Just say. If you wanna talk games, retro or new, hit me up in the comments below or on Twitter. It's really not unusual to find me talking to you in long threads under most videos. And if you would consider supporting me on Patreon, I would be eternally grateful as it will help me release better content and in time replace my editing PC that often feels as if it was a small Steam machine rather than a modern PC with the amount of heat it's radiating. But if you can't or don't want to do that, that's cool, as likes and subscribes are great too. Most of all, however, I would like to take a second here and thank all the YouTube Let's Play and Playthrough creator, from whose videos short bits were taken for this one as a video background to my commentary. They're amazing and thanks to their efforts retro community can prevail for years longer and in better form than it could have otherwise. So thank you. For me though, this is all, so have a good one and I'll see you next time. Peace.